Game one of the Invitationals is over, and I'm very excited to bring you some of my favorite moments. We'll start with the Irwin, where I was quite impressed with the game played between Grandmaster Alexander Fishbein and Elliot Scott Allen. Grandmaster Fishbein just came back from St. Louis, where he won the US Senior Championship. He had an amazing tournament, and I do not know if that was going to be the boost for him to continue playing great in this tournament or not, but the first game certainly shows he's definitely in his best shape, or he's definitely in the attacking mindset and was able to create some attack out of nothing, in my opinion, and build up nice game to the win. So we had Sicilian that transposed into Dragon Maruti Bind setup, where I was a bit surprised by the move or the black decided to go for Queen A5. Typically, black goes for Knight to F6 first, and then of course we see Bishop A2 to stop the idea of the knight going to G4, castle, castle, and then there's quite a few ideas for black here. Bishop D7 is one, knight takes D4 another one, A6 maybe to go B5, but in this position black decided to go for Queen A5 instead. This idea maintains the pressure in D4 and maintains the ability to potentially trade if necessary. Bishop E2 takes. And with two minor pieces being traded, I felt that white was not going to be able to build up any attack. Also, considering that black has the ability to trade the queen with Queen C5 or Queen to E5. Here, after castle, Grandmaster Fishbein didn't care that there was some pieces were traded off. He knew Queen E5 could be an option, so he decided to just go for the move F4. This stops the ideas of Queen E5 and also gets ready for a potential F5 idea later. His opponent played the natural Rook D8, Rook D1, Bishop E6, and now, of course, the long-awaited or ready prepared F5. Now with the bishop having to go, I was particularly impressed, and I love this idea. You see, it's a very typical idea for the kind of positions where white has more space, and the idea is to get rid of the queen from A5. This queen could go to E5, trade queens, but now what does white do? B4. I love this move so much, and black did not need to take the pawn, but he did, and it made a beautiful game that hopefully everyone will enjoy. Queen E5 was probably a slightly better choice for black, because if the queens get traded, then white will not be able to build up any attack, and besides, when F5 is played, you're giving up that square, so you want to be ready to deal with it. But I don't know if B4 first and then F5 would have worked. Probably not as great as it did in the game, but it kind of helped that black felt nothing was going to happen. There's nothing concrete, at least not to the first sight. But after queen takes B4, pawn takes G6, H takes G6. Please pause the video, take a moment, and try to find this gorgeous move that white was able to find here in order to take advantage of black's weak king. The move was the gorgeous Rook takes F6. Chess.com also gives it double exclam, and I would do that as well, of course. Pawn takes, knight D5, going for the F6 pawn, and yes, there is this move Queen C5, which pins the queen, and maybe this could be a reason why you would think this sacrifice doesn't work. But guess what? It does work, because not only do we have the king weak and everything, but we also have the pressure on the d file and the bishop hanging. So even if there won't be any mate after king h8 or king g7, there's no knight h5 to try to mate, but after king h8, because of the spin, white was able to win material and trades knight f6, and after the trade of the rooks, white has 2 minor pieces for a rook. Definitely cannot expect for more from this pass pawn as well, and white went on to win the game very soon after. So this was certainly my favorite game in the Irwin. I hope you enjoyed it too, and yeah, goody. With that said, let's move on to another game that I really liked from this round. I was debating between 2 games indeed, between Nico Nixon and Evan Park, or Noah and Eric Liu. And I gotta say, we're gonna go for the Evan Park one, I think. Alright, so this was probably one of the 2 my favorite games from round 1 in the Denker. Evan Park has played a very nice positional game if we get into it. It started as follows: d4, knight f6, bishop f4, a typical London system, but black chose some kind of the Queen's Indian kind of setup, not really, just transposes into some typical, controlling of the center kind of setup. Bishop d3, bishop d6, trades. Now, because of the move order, white can also play bishop g3, but in the game, white decided to make the trade, and now f4. This move stops c5, then prepares the idea knight f3, knight e5, castle, and such. But black was ready for it, just follows through with the development. I wasn't quite sure of this a3 move. Probably knight f3 is more natural, right? To just follow through in case you capture. We take back, and then, of course, we're not worried about this because we can just go bishop b1. And I know it could be a bit scary to allow the bishop to go to b5 because you can't castle, but we can always go knight e5, maybe h3, king f2. Eventually we will be able to get the king to a safe location. The center is close, so I don't think white should be that worried. But in the game, a3 was played, and Evan has played a relatively nice game from here on with a pawn structure that's symmetrical. Oftentimes we feel like there's not so much to do to improve. And maybe we can think that, wait, white should be slightly better because they got the good bishop versus black's, bishop in d7, which is restricted by the pawns. But guess what? Black has some ability to trade that bishop, and he did do so in the game. Look at that, a6. But you need to do in positions that are equal. A lot of the times people don't want to play anymore. They think, oh, why would I, let's just make a draw. No, why? If you want to improve, if you want to really be a better player, you really need to find the power to improve in your position. And you start with the small things, like here, just trade bishop. It's your bad piece. Just trade it. Knight f3, bishop e5. And now that the bishop will be traded, he's trying to improve the position of his knight. That was the next piece that needed improvement. White decided to just trade anyways because it's gonna happen no matter what. And we may think that these double pawns are weak. The truth is, b4 will be able to be played at some point, or simply bring the knight to c4, which is eventually what Evan has done in this game. And when that gets traded off, then we have another pawn that can be pushed b5, b4, and create some opening. White kind of hold on to the position for quite a bit of time and made relatively natural moves. h3, h5, check that out. Ensuring that the knight in f5 is not going to be chased away. Rook c8, king f2, knight d6 to be brought to c4, g6, everything is protected. slowly, step by step. Now, I love this move h4. Very nice positional move because it blocks white's pawn structure. It creates nice outposts for the knight in g3, and then eventually it push white's knight from g5, which does not do a thing. King e2, no cause for alarm. Knight h5, and he brought his knight to g3. Good. Now that the knight has improved, time to bring the other one. So he put it in f5 just temporary to kind of keep, I guess, more pressure. And white made a mistake according to the engine, but it's really hard to come up with improvement for white in this case because you see there will be some infiltration that we can't really deal with that easily. And the fact that, I mean, if white could just bring the king, trade the rooks, maybe that would be fine, but it's not so easy. I was wondering at some point if this would work, but I don't think so because we can just take here first and then we take. So you gotta figure out a way to support it, but it's not so easy to do. If you could, that might be fine because after we trade on d5, but it's very difficult to imagine white can actually find a way to do that. So look at that. No, you can't take because your knight is going to be stuck there and be lost. So you have to go back. Knight c4. Maintaining the pressure. White decided to take because it's difficult to really stay passive. And look how beautiful black was able to improve here. First of all, he played b5 because this move maintains some opportunity to play b4, and if the pawns were to be traded, then this rook would enter or the other rook would enter on the b file, though of course right now we cannot do it because that pawn would be lost. So black needs to figure out a way to break through, but which side? Obviously not there. e5 is an option, g5 is an option. He chose the latter. Rook b8, just keeping a bit of pressure. It looked like he was gonna go for e5. That was my first choice, but then no. This is a bit reminiscent of one of my favorite games of all times, which is Capablanca Treball. I talk about it all the time if you're following my own streams, but is the idea when you have so much extra space, you can always switch from one side to the other, and that's one of the things that I love about chess, the ability to just strategize, improve, plan, and develop. So rook a7, bringing the rook on the other side of the board whenever he's ready to, and now he thought it was the right time to break through, creating another weakness. There's one here, not easy to be attacked. I'm gonna create a new one or open up the position. Then he took. White has no way to stop that. Brought in first rook on the g file, then the other one, and now he's attempting b4, so just a little bit of a repetition there, threatening knight e3. And now it's time for the infiltration of the rook. First one to enter, second one will be coming. Look at how many weaknesses white has. There's no way to defend. It was a symmetrical position at the start. White didn't do much, and black simply improved his position. That's why this game is so nice, because you just have this ability to improve step by step. Maybe that wasn't the most ideal move, but it was just kind of part of the just shuffling the pieces around to try to find their best squares. Split up the square for the knight so that it could go to e4, and now that the knight got there, f5. And the finish was close with the rook e4, taking advantage of white's two recently created weaknesses, and he sealed the deal. What did you think of this game? I certainly enjoyed it. All right. Next up, There were quite a few interesting games in the Haring tournament as well, but I think the one that I liked the most, probably one of the fastest ones to finish, was the one between Ridi Varma Tanduprolu against Olivia Dink. The game started in a Caracan, and it was this Monte Carlo. Sorry, the pawn of attack. Monte Carlo's against the French. Apologies. So knight f6, knight c3, e6. I like this move order in a way and pawn structure that happened for white because black played e6 relatively soon, which blocked the bishop from going to g4. You know, when there's an isolated pawn, you want to make sure that you bring in the bishop and because that bishop cannot attack the isolated pawn. So you bring the bishop to get rid of the knight, put pressure on the pawn. But what happens? Well, white is like, you know what? That's not happening. It didn't happen. You can't do it. But anyways, I don't want to have an isolated pawn. I'm just going to go for c5. I'm going for the space. Which is actually kind of cute. I like to play that sometimes myself if I ever get this pawn structure. And oftentimes black tries to find a way to break through with b6, but you need to be careful when, because here bishop b5 and, you know, extra pressures. But after that, bishop e7, bishop b5, bishop d7, everything natural so far. And now white made this decision. Gave up the bishop there, but what did they get in return? They got the square in the center, and the fact that the knight is gone, black won't be able to really trade that just yet. But we got rid of the bishop. This is the game that I came up with a new terminology, I guess, or something, or maybe it existed. I called it the majority attack, and it's coming. B4 here. So the majority attack. It's normally the minority attack. Of course, I know that. It's just, it's always nice to have the ability to push your pawns, create your pass pawn. So here it is b4 threatening b5. White is gaining so much momentum now. You have to play a6, a4. They used to play b5. Now the knight comes to e5. And white is cruising through to gaining more and more space, while black gets a bit crammed up. Now no b6 was played, which is not really ideal. With the queen here, I don't think b6 is gonna happen anytime soon. And I went to h5. No worries, you can retreat. I'll chase you away from there soon enough. And queen c7 was a little bit of a badly placed queen there in c7. And now the bishop had to move because white is threatening capture. Bishop d8. And after bishop f4, knight g4. Beautiful way to finish up the game. Black blundered basically in this position, but it's hard to really come up with something. If you capture, then this is still a threat, and the majority is ready to continue to advance. So after bishop c7, bishop g5, there's no way to escape this entanglement that white has now. And after bishop d7, white finished off the game in a beautiful fashion with taking advantage of this pin. Feel free to pause the video if you want to find it. Check. And no bishop h6, but beautiful. Knight takes d5. And the deal was sealed. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did. I think it was definitely really cute. And don't forget my new coined terminology, majority attack. All right. Yeah, I mean, I have covered a lot of these games indeed. Yeah, I try. I try. And then I didn't really choose anything from the... So what did you do? Irwin, Denker. Guess we're gonna do Rockefeller. We're gonna do Rockefeller. Right. So my favorite game from the Rockefeller in round one of the Invitationals was definitely this game between Ted Wang and Syed Hoya. And I gotta say, like, Ted's always been impressive. I've commented on his game so many times. I knew he was going to be able to outplay his opponent. If you're looking at this position coming out of a French, white has slightly more space on the queen, on the king side, and maybe some potential breaks with a4 and such, but there's not much to really go from. So you need to really find a way to improve. And what do you need to improve? You need to find a way to activate your pieces, right? And find a infiltration technique, which Ted seemed to have no issue finding. So he starts this moment by playing the move b3, knight to b6, and now I was thinking myself what would be the best way to improve, and a4 idea to try to open up a file could work. G4 idea could be another thing, but first you gotta think which pieces you might want to trade, because it's a close position, so whatever you trade could be helpful. So in this case, we're trading the rooks. So he went for rook d3, bishop b7, rook c3, trading the rooks. And now after the recapture, rook c8 was played. Black felt that they needed to keep control of the file, but a5 was probably something that they wanted to consider at some point, or think about a way not to allow the king to go to b4, maybe not d5. I'm not sure what would be the best kind of, maybe f6. Try to trade the pawns and create some kind of activity for themselves on the g file. The way the game was played, rook c8 allowed white to play king b4, and guess what? The king is marching, is going to infiltrate, win material in the game. I mean, that's the king. The king wins the game. That's the way it's gonna go. So I needed improvement, and it's always great to block that pawn and keep this bishop in b7 restricted. I mean, this is a French we're talking about. That bishop is the bad bishop that black wants so desperately to get rid of with a knight in d4. It's not gonna be possible. Bishop e2, no worries. Now Ted just simply improves his pawn structure a bit here. The knight doesn't really have much to go from. a4. It's time to break open the position on the queen side. And now king takes. Actually like the king takes. I was thinking pawn takes could be interesting too, to get the b file open, but I think king takes is much nicer, because now you can always go back and bring in the rook to put pressure on the weakness. So he played rook a1, knight c5, activity. Black did, in fact, get their knight active. Bishop takes a6. Look at this beautiful infiltration. You don't have time to take the pawn. You lost an exchange, and then the game was simply sealed, because, you know, with an exchange up, there's not so much you can do. After king e7, black resigned. So my favorite thing of this, of course, trading the rooks, bringing the king, and finding the right breakthrough so that the rest of your pieces can get into the